Okay, so earlier today we reported on this channel that before the Rishi Sunak's Brexit vote on his new Windsor framework, we had a number of Tory MPs saying they're going to be voting against it, including Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, all the senior figures and former prime ministers. Then you had Steve Baker, who used to be the champion of Brexiteers, and he was behind the European Research Group, ERG, coming out to criticize Boris and Liz Truss and saying that if Boris doesn't vote for the deal, he's basically a pound shop Nigel Farage. So now in this video, we have a reaction from both Nigel Farage, but also Jacob Rees-Mogg, who also decided to make an intervention in favor of Nigel Farage. Let's go to Nigel Farage's reaction, then we're going to show you Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Oh, this is really good, yes. So Steve Baker, the great Steve Baker, the man who suddenly isn't a real Brexiteer, he was saying back in March 2022, let's trigger Article 16 immediately, let's take back control of Northern Ireland, let's bring it within the UK single market, but now he's a minister, he wants to back the grubby Sunak deal. He sums up all that is worst in British politics. What a loser.
What a loser. Now, of course, there are some people who support the deal, some people who oppose the deal. But the problem with what Nigel Farage is saying about the problem with Steve Baker is that how come when someone like Steve Baker was a backbencher, he would feel empowered to vote against Theresa May's deal? And not only that, but even until recently, when you had Boris Johnson as Prime Minister or Liz Truss as Prime Minister, Steve Baker was going around saying we need to trigger Article 16 to get out of the Northern Ireland Protocol. But now he's voting for the Northern Ireland Protocol. The same deal, but just more complicated. It's the same thing, basically. It hasn't really solved the problem. It's actually created new problems. But what happened to that, Steve Baker? That's the issue. Anyway, Jacob Rees-Mogg was also questioned, saying that, are you guys basically pound shop Nigel Farage? And he said, I take it as a compliment.
Steve Baker, former ERG chair, has now obviously Northern Ireland minister, has basically compared Boris Johnson to a pound shop Nigel Farage by opposing the Windsor framework. Are you a pound shop Nigel Farage?
Oh, I would take that as a great compliment. I would like to be the Woolworths of Nigel Farage's.
I love Jacob Rees-Mogg. I take it as a compliment. But yes, the Tory party continues to tear itself apart, being completely divided, and in the middle of all this chaos, there is absolutely no hope for the actual official opposition party, the Labour Party, to get their act together and grow up, but because they're also completely a bunch of childish party political amateurs who are just going for their end, focusing on their own agenda, their own vested interest, and the whole country is slightly confused right now because those who don't want to vote blue or red, they're also divided because we've got so many smaller parties and third parties and everything else that there's no unifying factor that could bring them together, both on the left side and the right. Because obviously on the political left, we've got millions of parties. And on the political right these days, we also keep seeing new parties coming up, popping out of nowhere. It's good for competition, but it's also been the main reason that British politics is being dominated by two main parties. It's not a two-party system, it's a top two party system. You can replace one of the two at the top, but you have to find a way to do it that can actually unify one chunk of the country. And I don't really want to keep saying left and right, because it's not really about left and right anymore. We're only saying left and right in terms of the language of the way House of Commons sits. So obviously this came from France. And you know, the left side is basically opposition, the right side is government, or status quo, but things have changed. So when I say left and right, I'm not talking about ideological left and right. I'm simply talking about this side or that side, the big chunk, the big tent of the country that are on one side and the other side. Anyway, this is the latest update. In the next video, we're gonna give you a bit of a highlight of what happened earlier at the Privileges Committee with Boris Johnson, because it was being questioned by the members of the committee, including the chairman of, although I don't think we can say chairman anymore, I think it's chair them of the, there's Sam, what's his name? Yes, Sam Smith would say that, you know, the chair them, Harriet Harman, was grilling Boris Johnson. And the problem with that was that Boris Johnson decided to hit back at Harriet Harman, And that was a little bit entertaining. We're going to come to you guys in about half an hour to give you guys that update on Mahyar, Tousi, and we are the media.